let's say my most exciting adventure professionally began. Setting up shared services as a project, which I thought was the toughest, to then moving into operations, which is where I really realized what it means to be in a difficult situation. Is where it started, but I have to also say these experiences also helped me build my career. Because I know it sounds very fundamental, but I think this fundamental, if taken care of really well, I think our solutions, technology, and everything will fall into place. Last but not the least, I think when I say AI, I mean as leaders in HR, we will also be managing our digital workforce, which is going to take another leadership style as well, because you would be managing a mix of digital and human workforce, right? So this is something that we have to be cognizant of and also prepare for. So now I wish I had a clean answer here for you, because
Growing up in India, studying finance, working for more than 7 years as an HR business partner, and then setting up global HR shared services for a traditional German manufacturing company. What sounds like a crazy idea is the actual story that we will dive into today. Welcome to another Employee Experience Labs podcast from the Munich Podcast Studio. Employee Experience Labs podcasts are about HR tech, employee experience, shared services, and other interesting topics around HR at the workplace. We continue our most successful season so far from the Workbook of an HR leader, where I'm talking to experienced colleagues in our field about their daily working routine and what and how they are going about the various challenges they have to face each day. I'm a tireless believer that we can all be better if we learn from each other. But there are not many opportunities to actually do that. Yes, there are the conferences, but how often can you attend one in a year? Yes, there are peer-to-peer connections, but how many do you manage to keep running? I'm a firm believer that we can all do a better job if we learn from each other, and so I'm inviting seasoned HR experts from various fields and companies to tell us about their workday and how they go about the challenges of today. Today, I'm speaking with Karun Mathew, Global Head, People Experience HR Shared Services and HR Digitalization at BSH Home Appliances. Karun and I first met way back, and we managed to stay in touch over quite a period of time. And I'm really happy to have him as a guest in today's episode. Karun has experienced a lot in his career across different interesting stations in the HR space, and also multiple different countries and cultures. Karun and I will dive deep into the specific setup that he has established at BSH and how he manages the variance of countries and local business demands while still focusing on global standardization. And of course, we will also talk about how Gen AI drives our work today and tomorrow. Let's jump right in and listen to Karun, Global Head, People Experience, HR Shared Services, and HR Digitalization at BSH Home Appliances. Hello. Hi. Welcome, Karun. It's so great to have you. We wanted to do this for some time already, so I'm really, really excited to have you here today. How are you?
Hi, Volker. Thank you so much. And I think I have to apologize for the delay. But I'm really excited. I'm doing very well. We've had a great start into the year. So
That's great.
Yeah, all positive and looking forward to the session.
That's fantastic. Now I'm really, really happy to have you. I've done a few of those interviews already from the Workbook of an HR leader, and I have to say that our peers are very excited and interested about these, and so I'm really happy to have you. And in a few seconds, when I ask you to introduce you a bit more, I think people will also understand why, because you have a very rich history and experience to share, but also a very exciting current role. But without any further ado, let's go there. Karun, tell us a bit about yourself. Who is Karun Mathew? What is your background? What did you study, and how did you get to the job that you are in today?
Firstly, it's a pleasure being here, Volker. So thank you once again. I come from India, and I started with my career in Siemens in the line of HR itself. This was something that I had made up my mind while doing my masters as well. That's a different story how I got to HR, but I started as an HR business partner with Siemens. Prior to everything else, the interesting bit was I also had the opportunity to work in different functions in an organization as part of my master's as well, which gave me this insight of working on topics related to people and how do we manage these topics as well. Post which I was given the opportunity to join Robert Bosch in India, and again in the business partnering fold itself, which led me through different aspects of HR business partnering within small entities and bigger entities in
Yeah.
Robert Bosch in India. And I did this in total as an HR business partner for about 8 years, 8 to 9 years, before I had the opportunity to work on a project to set up shared services. And that's where my, let's say, my most exciting adventure professionally began. Setting up shared services as a project, which I thought was the toughest, to then moving into operations, which is where I really realized what it means to be in a difficult situation, um, is where it started. But I have to also say these experiences also helped me build my career,
Yeah.
because I had the opportunity from there to work with our corporate organization of Bosch in Germany in
Yeah.
2016. That's when
Yeah.
I first moved out and moved into Europe,
Yeah.
and started my stint there in corporate, actually setting up a global organizational structure within the shared services organization and seeing how we could set up the collaborative environment a little more stronger for the different country units to come together, setting up regional organizations, etc. And post doing that, I was kind of missing the thrill of operations. So I had the opportunity to, within Robert Bosch, move to Portugal and be responsible for the regional hub that we had for
Very
Western
nice.
Europe.
Yes.
And it was a good 4 years that I spent in operations there. And again, in challenging environment, different times. We had COVID. We had those challenges as leaders running these this setup. And to be in that environment really taught me a lot as well. So I would say it cramped 10 years of experience in just 4 years, I would say. And then this took me to, or gave me the chance to basically interview for a role that we had for my current organization, which is wholly owned by Bosch, but it's called PSH Home Appliances. And I'm currently responsible for the global HR shared services, what we call as the People Experience Organization, as well as the HR digitalization organization globally. So
fantastic.
this was my professional journey. In qualification, I've done my bachelor's and master's in financial management and general management. So nothing to do with human resources, but I think there are a lot of elements of what I learned which I currently use when it comes to human resources as well.
Yeah, amazing, amazing. And I think if I recall it correctly, Karun, Portugal is when we first met, wasn't it?
So we first met when I was in Stuttgart, and we organized this trip to one of the units or plants of Mondelez.
Yes, you're right.
Yes.
Oh yeah. It was long time ago. Long time
Huge
ago.
ages ago, yes.
That's very exciting. Talking about your role, right? Global head of people experience when HR shared services and digitization. If you would have to describe this role in an elevator speech, what is it about?
Yeah. So it's basically, I remember you asked me this once also about what's the remit of this role, right? It's basically putting a lot of different aspects together. Let me start first with the main thing of leadership itself. Putting 9 different country units together, because we went live with our shared services organization and a global setup in the year 2022. So pretty new, if you ask me. And I took over from 2023 onwards.
Mm-hmm.
And the idea was, how could we get these different units, different countries together? How can we collaborate? How can we set up a system where you have focus on local operations, but
Yeah.
also contribute towards global topics as well?
Yeah.
The other element was overseeing the topic of process excellence, not only at a country level, but paint a picture of how this feeds into the future at a regional or at a global level, and bringing this visibility across the different countries for people to understand and then to draw out our service catalog as per this thing. Last but not the least, for me, the topic of understanding our technological landscape and seeing how we can enable this further for our employees in the organization to basically have not just the services running smoothly, but to ensure that that experience makes them feel like that they've been served very well. So the remit of my role is largely based on this in a very brief manner, the concept of bringing us all together as a global hybrid model, which is a mix of what we serve out locally in each of the countries versus what can we globally enable this organization with.
It's a very big remit, right?
Yeah.
And it's I think now it's one of the most exciting areas I think we can be with the abilities the technology brings to us today, right?
Absolutely.
And also, making a global organization feel smaller than it is today so much more easier than it has been a few years back. So really exciting. And I want to dive deep into that. But before we go there, not sure if everyone knows Bosch Siemens Home Appliance. Can you tell us a bit about the company?
Yes. So, Volker, we are called now as BSH Hausgeräte GmbH or BSH Home Appliances in English. It did start as a Bosch and Siemens joint venture, where both the home appliances unit came together and set up Bosch Siemens Hausgeräte at that point in time. But since January of 2015, we are now wholly owned by Bosch, and we go by the term BSH Hausgeräte or BSH Home Appliances GmbH. We are a company that caters to all your home needs when it comes to appliances, right from the smallest home appliance like, let's say, a kettle or a toaster, right up to our big appliances like the dishwashers, the washing machines, your dryers, your refrigerators and freezers, etc.
I have that all from you guys, and it's wonderful.
So yes, I mean that's a good hit because in Europe, for example, we are number one when it comes to value, and with over 38 manufacturing locations across the globe. We run some very strong global brands here. So we have heard of the Bosch home appliances, we have Siemens, we have Gaggenau, and then we have some very strong local brands as well, or regional brands like Neff, Constructa, like Juncker, etc. So this is coupled with, of course, a very strong services brand as well that we have, and we basically have been pretty prevalent in Europe with a great market in China and also the Americas as well. And right now also focusing our strategies on expanding further in the emerging markets, for example, like Turkey, India, and the other regions around there.
Very
So this
exciting.
is in a nutshell about BSH home appliances.
How many employees do you have?
We have around 60,000 employees.
60,000.
Yeah.
Fantastic. And in many countries. So it's a very complex landscape you have to take care of.
Yes. And I missed one part which you did mention was, I think, the sales revenue. We are talking about close to 14.8 billion euros. And this is as of 2023.
Nice. That's a good number. And I hope for last year a nice growth came to it. But that for later this year when it comes out. And when you think then, Karun, about the wider organization that you are in and the reporting, do you have HR and then shared services separately? Is shared services part of HR? How does the organizational setup look like?
Right. So in like I mentioned, in 2022 was when the shared services were set up, but it was not only shared services.
Yeah.
We had an overhaul of the, let's say, the HR organization as well. We constructed this into a global setup of
Yeah.
HR and had even the HRBP organization well defined, as did we also the shared services aspect and the COE organization. Right. So
Yeah.
this went live in October of 2022.
Yeah.
Having said that, the shared services within BSH for HR is part in the HR organization.
Okay. Yeah.
And for now, and I think in the coming future as well, it's a clear decision to keep it close to governance because, as I told you, it's a new setup. We want to keep
Yeah.
it close to governance where we are able to steer the changes and also pick up speed on that to how
Yeah.
the weights should be ideally put together to achieve the target picture that we have for ourselves.
Yeah. And how did you decide what goes where in your three-tiered model, right? What goes to the business partner organization, what goes to the COE, what goes to shared services? I've seen companies who said like, listen, everything that we can uh, put into a nearshore or offshore center delivery, this is part of shared services, and this will be enabled. Everything locally that needs to stay in country for whatever reason continues to report either into the COE or the business partner organization. But I've also seen it where you have like one, you could call it HR operations organization, which has all of operations, inclusive of the shared service centers in it. How is it for you?
Yeah. So let me put it in very simple terms. When this construct happened, the organizational, let's say, divide that took place, and how do we move what to which
Yeah.
functional team or sub-functional team within
Yeah.
HR?
Yeah.
We took the the elementary way of the Dable Rick model. So
Mm-hmm.
listing out all the processes and clearly understanding by comparing it to our mother organization as well as industry benchmarks to understand
Mm-hmm.
which
Mm-hmm.
are the common processes that you would normally put into shared services,
Mm-hmm.
and
Mm-hmm.
basis which an effort analysis was mapped
Yeah.
across each of the locations, and then this was where we carved out. So in very, let's say, simple terms, you have your personnel administration, data management, time offices, payroll, which was easy to pull out. And then you had the
Mm-hmm.
elements of administration from your benefits, from
Mm-hmm.
compensation, from documentation topics to topics related to pensions, etc., that were also mapped into the shared services. This is not where we drew the line and said this is a baseline now and that's it. We don't do this anymore. This was just to help us set the organization and go live.
Starting point.
And
Yeah.
post that, the idea was to work more on it. So we are
Mm-hmm.
constantly evolving on that front, and we have a project that was set up from the very get-go, which is called the Process Excellence Project, where we have two elements. One, where we capture within the organization of the shared services, and the other
Yeah.
element is to capture end-to-end and then gauge for ourselves where do we have administrative activities that could be moved, right? Because we are now in a stage where we aren't like our peers who did this a lot earlier, because at that point in time they focus more on the manual aspects because technology was not where it is today, right? And
Yes.
today we have more options to automate.
Yes.
We have more options to actually use Gen AI and other solutions and innovations to help us make our processes even simpler with very limited manual touch points, and actually identify more value adding consultative roles into the shared services organization.
Yeah.
So this is our focus area right now. And this was how the setup was done. Having said this, this is the HR shared services bit. Our colleagues in the business partnering are also transforming as well, trying to understand through feedback and various surveys from the business directly, how can they add more value, and how could they then from that bring in the required inputs for us in shared services for the COE organization to further strengthen and embolden their front ending to the business as well. The COE setup was pretty much again the same logic that we use. What's governance? Who owns topics within HR, right? And can we bundle this all as a global topic? And when I say global in BSH, we don't mean people sitting here only in corporate high towers.
Yeah.
But It could spread out, could have regional perspectives, people sitting in other locations and countries as well, bringing in fresh ideas into the concept and having ownership truly in the global sense then delivered out of the organization. So this was set up as well with that thought process and know-how. And yeah, we have a very, let's say, streamlined organization within HR for the 60,000 employees that I mentioned, with roughly 650 HR employees in these different functional teams that we have.
Very interesting. And how does decision making work for you in HR? Is it all three pillars are equal bodies, or is it that the shared services is there to service, and you take it in from the other two? How does decision making work for you?
Over here, I have a table in a seat in the table where we have decisions made. So
Yeah.
when I say I mean as the person responsible for shared services globally.
Yeah.
And the same is reflected in each of the countries where we have our shared services as well. So the country leads are also part of the key decision making for topics that impact our employees in the countries or even at a global level, right? So this basically portrays or should answer the question, do we have an equal standing in the organization? Yes. But of course, as you know, in any setup of shared services, when it's introduced, and which we just did a couple of years ago, we've also got to earn that space or that respect or that level where you're treated as a partner, right? And this is but natural because there are certain misconceptions that some people tend to have, and we are also trying to break this through communication and a lot of focus on what we achieve and showcasing this transparently. And this is the journey with which we need to empower ourselves even more when we have that coveted seat in the decision making for HR.
Yeah, I think this is a topic for everyone, right? You need to earn your trust and the reliability of the organization before your seat will actually be taken seriously, and you're part of the decision making process. Yeah, it's a proving point that I've seen as well, and I think we need to basically learn on a daily basis, right? Because
Absolutely.
different than the business partners or the COEs, our business is a daily business. Every day in one country, you do have a payroll going on, and if this is going wrong, yeah, right.
Yeah.
Very
I
different
think-
conversations again.
Exactly. And you said it right, because for me, I tell the teams when everything is going fine, that means we're doing a great job. And no one's talking about shared services, that means the job is being done very well.
Yes,
Because the
exactly.
minute we goof up, it
Everyone
gets
screams.
escalated and everyone's attention is there, right there, because we serve the basic. The
Yes.
basic is what many people look at it saying, oh, is it just basic? And I don't misconstrue what I'm saying when I use the word basic. What I mean is it's foundational, right? It's the backbone.
It's a hygienic
this
layer.
is
If
endured,
you mess up that, forget about the rest of HR.
Exactly. That's my point. So, but you're right. But for us to do this and then to convey this to people and to also make them realize that what we're doing here is very, very critical. And by communication and by showcasing our KPIs, etc., periodically, the customer satisfaction levels periodically, helps us cement that respect, to earn that respect, and to basically add more value on that decision-making table, or even the strategy table for that matter.
Yeah, absolutely.
So at least in BSH, what I like is that they've seen this change happening around in the market. Of course, we are a little late in this in this front, but we have the opportunity of having learned or experienced, having seen and experienced peers in the industry, and then understanding, okay, some things we should not repeat the same mistake, and ensure that we do it right from the very get-go. Yeah,
exactly. You have all of our memories, all of our experiences at your fingertips to have a much better starting point than many of the others. You might have started later, but they also put you into a much better position, I think. When I look at the companies who were one of the first ones to start with that, they for them it's more difficult to go back into a more agile perspective. For them, it's more difficult to turn and be flexible, versus the organization that I've seen that are a bit later to the game. They by default already implemented it as a more flexible, more agile organization, so that they can answer to different business needs, rather than being a monolithic stoic model in the organization.
Absolutely, yeah. So it really helps us that we have such peers that who are open to talk to us about it and transparently give us a lot of those insights,
Yeah.
and we don't have to go too far, Volker. We have Bosch, our main organization that has a sea of knowledge on this front, and they are more than happy whenever we've reached out to them to help us out as well. So this has helped us, and also, of course, we're doing this at a very good pace.
Mhm.
What I really like is also from a resource point of view, since we have this know-how and we're not really painting the picture from scratch. We're doing this also from a very optimized resource point of view as well, that we've
Mhm.
dedicated to this setup. So
Yeah.
this is what I really appreciate of the setup that we have in BSH, and how everyone chips in to contribute towards this one HR concept. So
Yeah.
that helps us, go towards our target picture in a more focused and
Yeah.
streamlined way. Yeah.
Fantastic. Karun, let's dive a bit around your actual structure in your organization. What I understand so far is definitely you're a global organization in the sense that you have a global decision-making framework, not that everyone sits like in the HQ, but you also then have uh, a local organization to make sure you match the business in the market.
Right.
How else does your structure look like?
Okay. So when I talk about shared services itself, let's say the operational part of it, we have it set up in 9 countries. BSH is prevalent in around 50 countries actually. But these 9 countries pretty much constitute 90% of the BSH strength. So these are the 9
Yeah.
out of the 10 biggest countries.
Yeah.
And in these 9 countries, we have our PX, or the shared services in
Mhm.
HR, set up. And we have in each of these countries a country lead and a
Yeah.
typical organizational structure within the organization. Now, having
Mhm.
said that, the teams here in these 9 countries not only focus on operations in the country, or let's say strategic topics around HR in the country that they support, but form a part of the global team as well. And how do we
Mhm.
do that?
Mhm.
So this is where I spoke to you about the optimization. We set up circles, and the circles are for different topics. So we
Mhm.
have one is a leadership circle that meets every 2 weeks.
Mhm.
And this is where all the country leads and I get together, and we discuss topics that range from a particular country doing an initiative, or in
Mhm.
general, what is the status of all the other topics, if there's something burning somewhere, and if we can exchange on new ideas and prioritizing topics that we should work on as an organization. And then we have also defined certain long-term circles. For example, there's the process excellence circle, and where each of these countries have nominated a country representative, and we have a global lead. And it could be someone from the country,
Yeah.
um, or it could be someone from corporate here as well, in case there is no know-how, which we support
Yeah.
with. And this global lead then organizes that this team meets as often as could be once in 2 weeks to once a month,
Yeah.
and they prioritize topics under their specific
Mhm.
aspect, and
Mhm.
also mention what those deliverables are. And then they
Mhm.
also present this to the leadership team. So
Mhm.
like this, we have a payroll circle, we have a process excellence circle, we have
Mhm.
something for data protection,
Mhm.
we have something for access, ease of access,
Mhm.
so
Mhm.
right from intranet to GenAI chat engine, etc. And we have a digital circle as well,
Mhm.
digital in
Mhm.
HRIT digital
Yeah.
or HR digitalization circle.
Yeah.
And this basically forms the main crux of how we are set up. And this helps us also ensure that the most important thing is to ensure that there is the regional perspective or the country perspective that's
Yeah.
also
Yeah.
brought in. Many a times, for example, when we talk about data protection, we get lost in GDPR and very EU specific topics, which we then try to put down on others outside of EU. And when we run it like this, we are able to clearly understand, and people are able to also see that, hey, I have something completely different in China. I have something very, very different in the United States. Likewise, something very different in India. And they also have to be factored in. And some of them are not, let's say, too restrictive for certain innovators. So we can probably do a pilot out there first rather than focusing on something in Europe, which would take much longer,
Yes. I hear you.
Yeah, and for me, these were lessons learned from the past as well. But this setup helps us, and of course, it was an experiment, Volker. Yeah, we even the teams were not sure whether this would work because we had to do this remotely. One, and you know how it is with virtual meetings.
Yes.
You tend to lose people a little bit sometimes. But if you keep it focused, keep it structured, and the leads of these circles, when they plan it out really well enough, I think it's also very fruitful.
Yeah.
May take a few meetings more than it would when you're face to face, but hey, the results are the same.
You get there. Yeah.
So,
Brilliant.
and this also helps us, or not us. I mean, the country teams feel like they're also accountable, because they're responsible also for these global topics. So they push it with a lot of passion from their side.
Great.
And we really have a very streamlined resource then and optimized resource structures. I'm not having too many people sitting on global teams, but we actually empower teams from the operations.
You make use of your existing experts in
Exactly.
the markets.
Yeah.
Brilliant.
So this is the org setup, and the 9 countries are where we are focusing right now, and we're also trying to see how can we further optimize this structure. But simultaneously, we're looking at small countries. How can we, and we're trying to build a concept around it. How can we provide for them?
Yeah.
Because a lot of them also outsource their services, and we're trying to see if there is a financial feasibility in keeping it outsourced or moving it captive in the organization.
Exactly.
Right? And we're trying to see how this balance could be brought out, or maybe, for example, we become the outsourcing partner. What I mean by that is, can another region provide this, or can another country provide this for a cluster of countries? The typical regional hub concept or model for small countries as well.
Brilliant. Thanks, Karun. I want to pivot a bit. You already started talking about technology, and the 2 core elements that I'm writing and talking mainly about in my posts as well as in the podcast are employee experience, and HR technology. I would love to get your view on both of these. When I think of employee experience, it's not completely new, but still it's an area that is evolving and where I haven't seen like one clear definition that everyone agrees to what it is, right? It's different in other areas like payroll. If you say payroll, everyone has a clear understanding what we mean. Experience, not necessarily. But for you, how do you define employee experience at BSH?
Okay. So I like your question a lot because you're right. It's something that we have been working on for many years, but when you try to define it, each one has their own definition around it, and every organization is also in that journey of defining, because what we had as employee experience, let's say 5 years ago, that definition has already evolved to something else today.
Yeah.
So it's the same at BSH as well. We are on that path to kind of put this into perspective. For us, employee experience in HR refers to basically the holistic perception employees have, right, about their interactions, about their communication, or their touch points for various topics within HR. And this could stem from right from your entry into the organization. How does that happen within recruitment to the very end when you exit out of the company? So, and you have various touch points in between. And like I mentioned earlier, if it's not just about being serviced or getting a response to a query that they have, or to a particular process that they initiate by touching the HR organization.
Yeah.
But what comes about that whole experience around it, right? And this is something that could also be based on each individual, how they are as a personality, to the kind of working environment that we have established for them, the management setup we have in the organization, how enabled our managers or leaders there for our employees, and how do they exuberate the let's say employee to manager relationship or employee to HR relationship. And then you have company culture, you have also the HR processes and policies, and most importantly, the technology behind it, right? So how easily do they get this access to HR? How can I resolve an issue sitting at my desk, or do I really need to be able to also have the option to go to a person, see them face to face, and get my solution from them? Because this could range from employee to employee as well. So this whole gamut and this whole defining that we're doing around this is a journey that's that we're focusing in every aspect in HR, right from recruitment. Like I told you, we are also doing a lot in basic knowledge base of HR. How do they access that? How easy is it for them to get that accurate information, to be very specific to the question that they ask, and how can they get that information through, right? And how fast can they get that through? And is that enough? Is that satisfactory enough? For example, when we did a kind of a quick survey when we were talking about Gen AI and chat engines, which are backed by Gen AI solutions, is this thing of, okay, I access the information, but what more? What more can this tool help me with? Can it help me raise a ticket directly from there without having me go into another tool to create a workflow? Can I access my manager also through that? Can I access this directly through my most commonly used tool, which is Teams, for example? These are experiences, right? But this could differ from how I deal with someone who works in the shop floor, who does not have a system in front of them, and probably prefer doing it on the mobile phone. Yeah. And how can I provide this experience also seamlessly for this gentleman or lady in the shop floor, for them to be able to also gain the same kind of experience? And then I have some old school, let's say, connoisseurs who like the thing to be very physical. Can I also still approach and have a face-to-face interaction, fill out a form, and get this done, right? So you have various perspectives, and what
And you
can
try
you
to cater wherever they are.
exactly? For me, this would be what we are trying to define and put in place. And also, of course, I'm not saying we do everything. Yeah. Some places we have to draw the line and say, hey, we can go only up to here, and we can't do more than this, right? Because it also means costs. It also means resources for us at our end, and we need to look at it objectively. Yeah.
Absolutely. Interesting. Karun, you already started to speak technology in your answer. How is technology organized for you? Do you have technology for HR within your organization, or is there a centralized technology department that has an HR arm that you work with? How is it for you when it comes to technology?
Okay. So our current setup is pretty clear. We have an IT team. It's a global team that supports us as well as they do with other functions as well. But we also have an HR digitalization team. We call them process and digital team in HR. And this team speaks the language HR. They're more HR than, let's say, IT.
Technology,
So they're not the typical old school definition of IT. They basically understand the requirements, and they're also able to speak those requirements in a technical language. So they
the translator.
translate that. Exactly. They translate that. They're able to also scout along with the IT colleagues for the right solutions that's required to address that requirement, and then help establish or implement that through, let's say, bringing in the right project management around it, right? And after that, of course, it doesn't end with that. They're also available as owners for the topic. Of course, the main owner is our IT team for a tool, but they support more from a maintenance and support perspective. If there are changes, etc., they also are available, the digital team. So they're, let's say, IT consultants of sorts for HR.
You have like a technology ownership and a kind of business ownership. And the business ownership
Absolutely.
sits in your team,
Yes.
and they are the conduit to the technology.
Exactly. Yeah.
Yeah.
So this is the
Brilliant.
setup that we have. It's
Yeah.
also a very streamlined team. We have a global setup
Yeah.
for this team, which also interacts with the various countries. And in some of the big countries, we also have, let's say, the local IT, HR IT or HR digital experts as well.
Yeah.
And of course, here we're still working on building that network a little more strongly, and also empowering and skilling, having the right skill sets available also within that organization.
Yeah.
But having said that, the countries represent strongly what we have is also called what we have in countries as the local IT
Yeah. Okay.
setup as well. And so they are the best in terms of know-how for that landscape. So they bring this transparency to the global team as well. And there are also elements of the global solutions which are there in the country. So it kind of like marries together this two sets of organizations. So though they are part of the local IT or digitalization team in HR, they do not belong to this global team that we have out here in BSH.
Interesting. And how does that then translate to your technology stack? What are the main applications that you use and how are they set up? Are they set up globally? Are you having in-country instances? How does your technology stack look like?
Yeah. So it's a mix. So some tools are global for sure,
Yeah.
right? And we have a global ERP system as well, which is SAP. But currently we are on SAP on-prem. We are also working on our digital strategy to migrate towards cloud-based, the best of suite solutions. And having said that, we've already had one very good success with Success Factors going live in LMS
Yeah.
last year.
Yeah.
And with that
Congratulations.
experience, we are a little more emboldened to now take bigger steps into this topic. Having said that, so the current stack is very simple. So this global topics touch upon certain areas of certain functional topics within HR. So, for example, in recruitment, we have a global solution. Talent management, like performance management or succession planning, we have a global solution. But we also have a spread of local solutions as well in the countries. And this comes from the fact that prior to the global setup in HR, it was very country-specific organizations as well, right?
Yeah.
So they also had a lot of, so that was one reason, but they also had certain legal requirements locally that also influence certain different requirements locally. And of course, you also have topics which are important in a particular country, probably not so in other countries, and hence it's very specific to that country, and they prioritize that more and have certain local solutions for that as well. So, but having said this, the target picture for us is to have a clear definition of what moves into a global IT landscape. And this is something that we are currently working on in our digital strategy in the next, and we've been working on it since the past 6 months or so now. And we also will be presenting this very soon to our board of management. And the idea here is to show them that for this defined set, the stack will be global.
Yeah.
But we are not completely global. We're also saying that we also want to follow a hybrid model, which is to also ensure that certain applications which do not touch this global architecture will still remain local, and the local teams are empowered to go ahead and take call there.
Yeah.
But of course, we want to also ensure that this transparency exists so that we don't have something that is a duplication of what's already wired globally, right? So having said this, so this is one cloud best of suite in the target state. And in the current state, we also have, for example, the best of breed approach. So this is something we want to weigh and see if a best of suite already addresses this so that it helps us from an integration and other aspects around it. But for some topics, a best of breed also makes sense. So it could be a combination of two. So we have this in some cases here, but we want to see when we do work on the digital strategy with cloud-based, best of breed, and local, how do we marry all three together, and what percentages would we then focus on or distribute across the three elements. This is something that we're still working on.
Very interesting. Thank you, Karun. I think we have a very good understanding now of how your HR organization is set up, but also about your technology stack. When we now look into, the daily life in your role, in your position, your daily life. What are your regular business as usual topics? What is, awaiting you in the morning when you wake up and start your day?
Okay. So, being in, I mean, I'm not directly in operations, so I'm, one thing that I don't have anymore when I was in operations was these daily
Daily
escalations.
hammer. The grinder.
The grinder, exactly. And sometimes I do miss that. But having said that, I have to admit that for me, a regular day would start with basically the certain hot topics that we
Is it?
have on our table. And those hot topics are, I would say, almost equal to operational pressures that you have, operational escalations. These largely stem from some audits or findings that come up in certain countries, which could also apply to other countries as well. So this is something that I would say, we prioritize, but as and when it pops up. The other topic for me right now would be the transformation, as our organization is also transforming.
Yeah.
We have topics around transformation that's critical on very tight timelines and timelines that do not have the luxury of flexibility. So we have to ensure that we get things done within those specific timelines. And this
Yeah.
is also something that keeps us on our toes.
Yeah.
Apart from this, I think one of the main topics that I almost on a daily basis follow up on is the topic around process excellence. We have been working on cleaning up our processes, trying to standardize as much as we can across those 9 countries, and also using the same our template to expand this to the other functional areas in HR. So we've been closely interacting with our business excellence organization as well as the organization and culture team to use this template and work with them to understand new features on how we capture this as well, and to make it a little more end-to-end rather than just in services alone. And so this is one of the topics that we are focusing on as well. I know it sounds very fundamental, but I think this fundamental, if taken care of really well, I think our solutions, technology, and everything will fall into place,
Yeah, it is, Karun, and particularly for what you just, shared 2 minutes ago with your big idea of coming to a global cloud solution for the main topics, right? If you want to get there, you need to have this cleaned up process excellence first.
Right.
Otherwise, you will not integrate or implement something that really adds any value, but it's just a copy in a different color of what you have today, and then it's
Right.
not worth the money that you invest in it.
True. Very true. Yeah. So
And when
I
you
think we.
when
Sorry,
you
go
then
ahead.
think about this, Karun, what is for you or for your boss, for that matter, what does success look like? What are the KPIs, the measures that you look at or your boss looks at to say like, hey, Karun, good job?
Okay. So now I wish I had a clean answer here for you because right.
Honestly, Karun, I don't think anyone was providing like a clean answer here. I think this
Yeah.
is why it's interesting and why I'm asking it, right? It's about your perspective and how you go about it.
Right. So what we have from an operations point of view alone, we are yet to implement our ticketing tool to also help us then gather our intelligence around it, right?
Yeah.
But in some countries, we already have a reporting mechanism on operational health. Basically, also showing us the number of requests that come in, the transactional requests that come in, types of transactional requests. But at a global level, we don't yet monitor these, because what we're trying to do is we're trying to implement this more and have a definition of this more commonly put in place. One of the topics that we are focusing more on is in general customer satisfaction. So
Mhm.
post every transaction to be able to reach out to our and when I say customer, our employees here,
Yeah, yeah, yeah.
and ask them what was that experience like. Yeah, and to make it as easy as possible for them to give us that in
Yeah.
a matter of just a single click or maybe maximum of 2 clicks
Yeah.
to give us that feedback.
Like a
And so
star
this is
rating
wrong
or
behavior.
something. Give us 1 star with 5 stars.
Exactly.
Yeah.
Yeah.
Mhm.
What's the star rating methodology is a very common one as well. Yeah. With the potential to also ask them for some qualitative remarks if they have the time for it. Right. So, yeah. But having said that, right now, what we have as targets in the organization is the setup itself. So,
Yeah,
what we're
okay.
focusing more on is more, let's say, organizational structuring on our service catalog,
Yeah, yeah,
doing a time and effort analysis across these. So our target for this year is to ensure that we cover this time and effort for all the processes that we mapped already
yeah,
and have gone live with the standard processes to understand and then understand what are the automation elements. So we are also defining what percentage of automation should we bring in now
Yeah.
for all these standardized processes.
Yeah.
And then putting these into our target sheets, right? So
Mhm.
this is happening in the next couple of weeks.
Very
And
interesting.
hoping that next year we have the rollout of our ticketing tool will also help us implement the required KPIs. So
Yes.
we are working on a KPI set now to
Yeah,
also
yeah.
define what KPIs do we need at different levels. One, within the operations teams to see where they stand real time, to reporting KPIs at different levels of management, what we want
Yeah.
to show our stakeholders and partners, and to our management as well, and to gauge for ourselves with the required insights on how we need to further develop this. So
Yeah.
this is something that's happening this year, and
Yeah.
hence for me, my goals largely right now, more than operational goals, are
Mhm.
rather than
The
rather
setup
on
goals, the
on
project goals.
exactly.
Yeah.
Yeah, and the same
Fantastic.
applies for IT as well. Yeah.
Yeah. Yeah. Very, very interesting, Karun. Karun, I have to say, time flies when you have fun, and we're
Oh,
already
yes.
coming to yeah. I have to come to be, also taking care of your time that you were so nicely giving to me and to the audience. Wanna get to close the interview with one or two questions. You have a very interesting roadmap ahead of you. And we've learned that you have seen so much already. So when you think about this with your experience as an HR and tech practitioner, when you look into the future, let's say 5 years from now, where do you see the HR function in 5 years, or where do you see your function in 5 years?
Yeah. I think, in very simple words, high on automation and innovation, more driving value added services out of shared services,
Mm-hmm.
truly strategic business partnering with a higher service ratio as compared to today, backed by real time data that supports your decision making and consulting to the business as well.
Yeah.
Um, and I think, last but not the least, I think when I say AI, I mean as leaders in HR, we will also be managing our digital workforce, which is going to take another leadership style as well, because you would be managing a mix of
Yeah.
digital and
Yeah.
human workforce, right?
Yeah.
So this is something that we have to be cognizant of and also prepare for. Yeah.
Absolutely. Thank you so much, Karun. This is very interesting, and I'm really curious how this will look like, right? Particularly your last point. Um, we will definitely have employees like today. We will have a digital kind of workforce, the AI workforce, and probably we will also have the in betweens, folks that are AI enabled, and therefore can bring even more value. Uh,
Absolutely. Yeah.
very interesting. Karun, thank you so much for your time. It was lovely talking to you. It was very insightful for me. So thank you so much for sharing everything with us.
Thank you so much, Volker. It was a real pleasure being here, and I'm really, really grateful that you invited me for this.
Now, of course, Karun. Thank you so much. Have a wonderful rest of your day.
Thank you. You too.
Thank you. Bye.
Bye.